How's it going, everybody? This podcast is brought to you by RYYZN Make Life Workout, a health, self-development and lifestyle platform building a passionate community of knowledge seekers, creative dreamers and future leaders.
For details on the latest RYYZN event that will feature expert speakers in the field of self-development and growth, check out www.ryz-workout.com.
That's www.ryz-workout.com. Enjoy the show. How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the High Frequency Club podcast. My name is Marwin Salario.
And I'm Sinead Bierman. We're here talking all things self-development, growth and mindset.
In this week's episode, we speak to the flow coach and personal trainer, Katie Fisher. She talked about her experience with bodybuilding and how that led to disordered eating and body image issues, how this impacted her health personally and professionally. She also shares the rituals and the systems that got her out of that mindset, out of the mindset from hating her body to celebrating her body.
We also talk about Katie's business rebranding to Flow Coach Katie, which is personal training and programming to meet a woman's cycle. We also pick her brain on hormonal contraceptives, the alternatives, and the importance of having a regular cycle.
A super valuable lesson whether you're a female that's training or if you're a male training females.
Be sure to follow along at all your favorite audio platforms and Instagram and YouTube.
Enjoy the show.
Awesome.
So now you're a podcaster as well as a personal trainer, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I was going to say this off camera, but now that we're on, I actually know of you back in the bodybuilding scene.
Yes. I'm pretty sure we were bodybuilding at like the same kind of time.
That's right. When Sinead told me about you, and I was like, oh yeah, I know of Katie. Like, I've watched her compete. She used to be, a bikini competitor at the same time that I was doing my men's physique.
Yes.
And that's how I knew of you. And then I did my research on your Instagram, and it's very clear that yourself has also gone through a personal and professional transformation.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
In order for me and Sinead and our audience to get to know Katie, what do we need to know about your past to understand the person that sits with us here today?
Oh, okay. Obviously we were like rolling around in the bodybuilding scene at like the same kind of time. In 2015. Yeah, 2015.
Yeah, you tell me. I was actually trying to think of it.
Yeah, I think it was like around 2015. I was actually working for Extreme Nutrition, and they kind of run the like NZIFBB in Auckland and in New Zealand, really. And so I was kind of training to be a PT at that point in time, and so I was just kind of like needed a side hustle or a main hustle to support me while I studied. And so I was actually running the whole online ordering system for them, and they were like, you should compete. And I was like, I already kind of like felt some type of way about my body image has never been great, and so I was kind of like, we'll already have one toe in the bad body image, like might as well dip the whole leg. And so I was kind of like, actually I'll give it a go. And so I got ready for a show and wasn't ready. I was going to do Auckland's, wasn't ready. Did Northlands, did it once, had to kill myself to absolutely get to an acceptable physique for bodybuilding, and I noticed that my body image, it was already hanging by a thread, and then it just got progressively worse, and I thought, well, once I finish doing this, it will get better, and then it didn't, and it got worse and worse and worse. I finished my PT degree and then kind of went into working at Les Mills, and I kind of put my bad body image and the stuff that I'd kind of learned through bodybuilding under the guise of I'm a PT now, it's my profession, I have to look a certain way. And so I kind of like kept that going in the background for a few years. Like I was kind of try to put my best foot forward and presenting to my clients like, you don't need to eat chicken and rice, to get the physique that you want. Like it's all about balance. I've always been that way inclined with working with my clients because I had obviously been down that road and it was making me miserable, and I didn't want that for them. I wanted them to live a balanced life. So I I was like almost trying to fool myself into thinking that I had got out. Like, oh, I train more holistically now, I help preach balance, I've got out. But it wasn't for another maybe 5 years till I actually got out of that mentality with bodybuilding. So, you know, I was always trying some new way of eating or some new way of like training, like, oh, I've heard that this kind of training is better for fat loss, so I'd trial it on myself and see how it went. And it was just like kind of like you get into that vicious cycle until it got to the point where I decided, you know, like I went to my counsellor one day and I said to him, like, I want to get a boob job. My counsellor was like, you know, if you do that, you won't feel any better about yourself. Like, body image work is an inside job. It's not an outside job. And he was like, you keep trying to make it an outside job, but it's an internal thing. And I was like, I'm going to go and do this. And he was like, honestly, it's not going to change anything. And I was like, okay, but I'm still going to do this. And he was like, okay, well, you go do that, and when you come back, let's chat. And I like came back, I went and did it, came back, and like 2 weeks later I was sitting in his office and I was like, yeah, you were right, I don't feel any better about myself. In fact, I feel worse about myself because I thought it would fix what was going on in my head, but it didn't. It just was there, and now I feel like I have no options. And he was like, okay, cool, well, are you ready to start the work? And I was like, yeah, well, I don't really have anything else now, so yep, let's go. So at that point, probably like 2.5, 3 years ago, I started to work on my internal world, really, the way I talked to myself, and slowly, I did realize that body image acceptance and a lot of the fitness realm is an inside job. It's not just train legs and get the legs you want. It's consistent training for health and feeling good and like, you know, like stress relief and so many other benefits, being fit and increasing your longevity and feeling mentally good about yourself. And sure, body image does tie into that, but it's also about like an inside job too, like the way you speak to yourself, the way that the expectations you put on yourself, all of that kind of things, they come along with body image and kind of the fitness territory. So I noticed over the span of about 3 years that I started to become a phenomenally better PT as well and coach in helping my clients on their journey from doing my own work. And so like you said, I started out in bodybuilding, but like I've come so much further than that to realize that, you know, fitness is so much more than just leg day, arm day, shoulders, chest, you know, all that kind of stuff. So yeah. Amazing transformation.
I'd like to go back to what you said about you started to preach balance to your clients, but it wasn't for like another 5 years until you actually
started to do it myself.
Yeah. What kept you in? What were your triggers that kept you grounded in that world, even though you were teaching something else? Because it sounded like you're half-hearted.
Yeah.
And I am the same.
Yeah.
I asked because I'm curious about it, because that was me too.
Yeah, and I think it was to do with expectations, right? And because bodybuilding is so prolific in the fitness industry, especially when you're a coach and a PT, like, you know, a lot of them dabble in that anyway. So it kind of got into my head that, like, in order to be successful in being a coach, I needed to look a certain way, and I wanted people to be able to feel like, oh, she knows what she's talking about. And if I had a body that backed up some kind of science around that, then maybe I would be more accepted in the PT world. But what I didn't know is that, like, generally all of the other trainers who do look a certain way, it's so far removed from normality that it's so intimidating for clients that they're not going to want to work with you anyway. It's so unrelatable, and you know, they don't even want to look like that. So it's like it was all down for me to, like, internal perception of what I thought people wanted or what I thought I should be presenting to people, and the absolute kind of expectation I was putting on myself, I think, was so weighted. I was just crumbling under it. There was no way I was going to mentally or physically succeed because it was just such high pressure and such high, like, unattainable basically for myself as well. Yeah.
Do you feel a lot of the people you were surrounding yourself with at the time and working with were sort of the same? Or did you have anyone that was kind of a bit like, hey, Katie, you're preaching one thing, but you're kind of doing the other? Or
yeah. Well, like, so my husband obviously is also a PT and he was working in Les Mills with me. And I remember, like, he was also training for a comp, but then had a major accident, and so he couldn't ever go through with it. And he kind of went through a bit of a transformation then when he had no choice but to face his demons around body image. And I remember when I was, like, 24 hours out from my show, and I was, like, crying on the floor, like a child having a tantrum, like beating my little fists against the carpet, like, wailing, like telling Kurt that I was not lean enough to get on stage and that I would be an embarrassment. He was like, like, this, you're like, you can't see it right now, but you're totally deluded. Like, this is no good for you. Like, this is where this stops right now. Like, you cannot even see. He's like, you've got veins running up your stomach. Like, you have a six pack. Like, you haven't eaten normal food for like 12 weeks. Like, he was just like, you come over to hang out with me and you just fall asleep because you're so exhausted. And he was like, this is no way to live. And like, if that's the cost of looking like this, like, how can you want to do this? And I was just like angry at him because I was like, well, how dare you say that to me? I've worked so hard to get here. Like, can you not celebrate my success? And he was like, at this kind of cost? Like, I lose my partner. Like, you know, I don't know who you are anymore. Like, you're not even you. And I was just like, so angry at him because I was like, can you not see, like, I've sacrificed so much to try and be proud. I want you to be proud of me. And he was just like, well, I don't care how you look. Like, I don't care how many abs you have. Like, I love you for you. And it made me really angry at the time because I was like, whatever. But now when I reflect back, that was him saying, like, you can't go any further than this. Like, this is crazy. Like, the way that your brain is working, the way you're thinking about yourself right now is like scaring me, and I don't want to lose you. And so a few of my friends did say a few things. Like, I remember going out with a friend as well to lunch, and she said to me, it'd be really nice to be able to have lunch with you where you enjoy a bagel too. And I was just like, what do you mean? And she was like, well, you always just eat like an omelette with like, and you ask them not to cook it in oil, and you get like wilted spinach on the side. Like, you know, she was like, I always get to enjoy a bagel and you watch me eat my bagel. It would be really nice if you actually could enjoy one too. I was like, I don't even like bagels. She was like, okay. But like, I'd be sitting there and being like, is it good? Is it delicious? Tell me what it tastes like. Oh, I can see the cream cheese. Like,
it's interesting how much we normalize that.
Yeah,
in that scene.
And like you said, you say like it's because I'm disciplined.
Yeah,
and I'm saying this is me.
That's how we
nice.
justify.
Yeah,
that's how we justify.
I'm so hardcore.
Yeah.
Hardcore.
I'm disciplined. You're not. I've got goals.
To dinner with my mates, and I'm the one with Tupperware.
Yeah.
And I'm taking care of my health. And at the time, that is exactly what you believe.
Yeah, and I truly thought that it was like, I thought it was like admirable. Like, I was like, look at me, like, I'm in the fitness industry, I'm the pinnacle of health. Like, I'm lean, and I get my 8 hours of sleep a night, and I take my magnesium, and I train consistently, and I eat my meals in my little boxes. But I didn't realize for a long time that I was only living a half life, because being healthy is not just, you know, eating a veggie. It's so much more than that. And it was miserable, absolutely miserable, being in that kind of routine and, you know, Groundhog Day over and over again. I'm sure, you know, reflecting now, you can realize, like, it just robs you of so much.
Yeah, I missed my friends so much.
Yeah, I missed my friends too.
It wasn't until after, like, I prepped for 2 shows, failed at both, because for some I too thought I wasn't leading, I wasn't ready, and then I actually did it. And the turning point for me was, I thought I looked real good. I thought I was shredded, I was big, and then it got to, I was backstage and I was in line, and I was like, where are the dudes that I'm competing with? Because the people around me are fucking huge. There's no way that I'm competing with these boys. And they were. And I was like, I thought I was going to be at least number 1 or 2, got on stage, and I came last.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, what the fuck? What is the next bridge over?
Yeah.
And it was drugs.
Drugs.
It was testosterone.
Yeah.
And then I asked myself, is it worth that?
Yeah.
And then that was the first and only show that I had ever done.
Yeah.
And then as I started to get back into normal life, I started to lift so much more heavier. I started to feel so much more better. I actually started to see my boys.
Yes.
I could have a beer with my friends.
Yeah.
I could go out on the weekends. I could do all the things that I once thought that I was sacrificing in order for this better good.
Yeah.
I didn't know that there was an actual even better good, which was the other half of life outside of training and nutrition and sleeping.
Yeah. And it's really interesting that, like, you know, I don't think that drugs are addressed enough in the industry. Like, you know, because I was kind of almost in the ring of people who were running everything, I didn't realize until a lot later how prevalent drug use was, like even in all of the females. And I remember, you know, being told after the show, like, oh, you know, you would have come, you know, first or second if you'd had way tighter glutes. And, you know, like, what I was doing in order to get to just where I was, like, you know, like it was insane, like the hours and hours and hours of cardio and running and stuff to try and like get lean legs. Plus, like, you know, for like maybe 6 weeks, all I'd eaten for like 3 meals a day was fish and green vegetables, but it was like a minimal amount. And like I was so desperate that I got to the point where I was like chewing gum, but like as soon as it lost its taste, I would like spit it out and put a new bit in my mouth because it was the only thing that was kind of tasty. And then when they said to me, oh, you know, you'd have to get so much leaner through the glutes and your legs, and I was like, well, how would I ever possibly do that? I could not be doing physically anything more than I was doing. And they were like, oh, you'd have to go on E-blockers. And I was like, I'm not really keen on fucking with my hormones. Like, you know, I was already like, you know, they're like, oh, you could do this, you know, this person runs this person runs this. And then it all got a little bit too scary. And I was like, I don't think that I could ever do this to myself again, like
hardcore.
Or for a comp, like, or for like to get a trophy.
There's no pay.
Yeah, just for glam most of the times to be like, oh, look at me.
And like normally you're like, you know, your career in the industry would be so short anyway, like to get a pro card to compete like 4 times over in the US and then go and move on with your life. Like I was like, I just don't. I think there's more to life than this.
What was your turning point? Was it when you were on the floor and being the homeboy? Shout out to Kurt. Can't let that one slide.
Yeah, he was awesome. No, it was just like, obviously I was going through like bulk and cut cycles, or like, you know, trying to you know, add muscle, like lose fat like a few more times. And I guess I just got, there was one day, obviously I'd been going through this a couple of times, you know, a few friends had reached out and said stuff to me, and I'd just been like, oh, whatever. But I went to the mall because I had an event and I wanted to feel good about myself, and every single changing room I went into to try something on, I just would cry. I'd just stand there and cry and just be like, oh my God, I hate how I look in everything. Like, I hate pants, I hate skirts, I hate everything. Like, what the hell? And I came home and Kurt wasn't really feeling that well or something that day because he was still in bed, and it was like maybe 10 a.m. and I just went home and I sat on the edge of the bed and he was like, Shog, what's wrong? And I just like broke down and I was like, I don't know how to do this anymore. Like I hate myself so much and it's just getting worse and worse and worse and worse. Like I thought that I would get to a point where I felt okay with myself, but I don't know if I feel like it's just getting worse. Like I don't know what to do anymore, and I'm like, I had no more fight left in me. I was just exhausted. I didn't have any more energy to give, and I was like, at this point, like I had like between like 35 to 40 hours of in-person PT per week that I was running. So I was just like exhausted from running like that many clients physically, like, you know, like up at 4:30 in the morning, you know, plus like meal prep on a Sunday, weighing all my stuff into a Tupperware, and investing in all of my own training that I was doing daily. I just had nothing left in me. I was, you know, and I think that was probably like 3 years post-comp. Like I'd been at it for that long to try and change myself genetically or whatever, like be out of all of this stuff, re-sculpt myself. And it was like, it kind of hit me at that point that like it was never going to happen. Like I either make friends with my body and like with myself and actually work on becoming a better person, or like there was nothing else down that road left for me anymore. And so that was kind of the point where I started seeing a counsellor. Like, I was like, I need help, because he said to me, like, we need to get you help, because he previously, like, since 12 or 13 had been dealing with bulimia for most of his life, and so he could see the road that I was going down and that I'd been walking the entire time. And he said to me, when you're ready, like, let's talk about this, because he could see what I was doing to myself. And I said to him, I don't know what to do anymore. And he's like, we need to get you help. And I was like, I don't know, what does that look like? He's like, well, first of all, we need to get you into counselling. And so he got me into a good counsellor who was like really great. He was like, I'm not going to ask you to do anything you don't want to do. He was like, I'm just going to help you see things from a different perspective. And like after about 3 or 4 weeks, I was like, oh, okay. And then I was like, went in, like, I was like, I'm going to go and get surgery. And he was like, it's not going to change anything, like I said before. And I was just like, well, I'm still going to do it. And he was like, all right, we'll talk when you get back. And I like tried to fight him the whole way on it. And then I came back and I was like, right, well, that was my last shot I was going to shoot. I don't feel any better. So, all right, read me like a book, help me. I'm waving my white flag. I can't do this to myself anymore. And then I started to get comments from my friends like, oh, you seem lighter, you seem happier, you seem, like you're starting to enjoy life again. Like, I started to drink a flat white. For so many years, I'm like black coffee only. I started to drink a flat white and I was like, oh my God, like this is a small joy in life that I have been denying myself for what reason? Like, because I thought people might think I looked better. Like, I'm the one that has to live life. And so, like, I just started, like, little steps, and then I got so far that I looked back and I watched a Taylor Swift documentary where she was talking about her struggles with food. And she said, oh, some days I don't feel okay with myself, but then I tell myself I'm never going back there again. Like, we know where that road leads and we're not going down there anymore. And I was like, oh damn, it's not just me who feels that way about myself. Like, plenty of people, like even celebrities, feel this way. And so I was like, damn. And I was like, okay. And so now I use that as my mantra. So like whenever I get caught up in body image and like pressure on myself, I pull myself back to that moment where she said that in the documentary, and I go like, we know where that road leads. And it brought us nothing, like nothing, no joy, like nothing in life. So like, let's not go back down there. And I almost step back off the ledge again and I go, yeah, you're right. Like, so use it as a reminder.
Yeah, it's such a great segue into my next question, because that type of transformative change, the hardest part is creating that new identity, right? And sometimes we fall back to what is familiar and what we think is safe at that time.
Yeah.
And I think what helps us form that new identity is, creating rituals. Like you did, seeing a counselor is a ritual. You had a mantra that you learned from Taylor Swift that was a ritual. Do you have any other rituals that would help other people who are in the same boat that you did that helped you transform? Yeah,
so there were a few cornerstones for how I started to get myself out, and now I prescribe it to my clients as their mental health homework. Like whenever I get a new client, I say like, how is your body image? How do you feel about yourself? How's your relationship with food? And if they're like, oh, it's not great, I'm like, okay, this is homework that I want you to do every single day. So one of them is like affirmations. So what I do is I didn't even realize I was doing it at first. My counselor suggested I do it, but I started to think about all of the things that my friends were saying to me that were awesome about the things that they loved about me. So like around, because I started to be more social, I started to pick up friendships that I had let like kind of fall to the wayside. And I started to try and use them as reminders as to why I was doing what I was doing and like moving forward with my life. And then it started to turn into my own positive self-talk, like things that I was really proud of. So, like I would have a shower and night, and then I would rub my lotion and then I'd be like, I'm a real kind person, like you're awesome. And like, I'm real proud of you today. We had a real stressful situation and you did great. Obviously, I do this in my head. I don't do it out loud. I'm not a crazy person. And then I'd be
It's like, oh, that's Katie talking to herself again.
yeah, she's doing her affirmations. No. So I do this in my head, and I'm like, thank you, legs, for, like, you know, getting me through my workout today, or my X amount of clients. Like, thank you, body. Like, you are amazing. I'm so honored to, like, have you as a home. Thank you for keeping me alive. Like, you know, I started to talk to myself more kind, and just be like, try and remind myself of all of, like, the positives. Like, you are courageous, you are kind, you are intelligent. Like, just like whatever would pop into my head, I would try to foster the positive self-talk. And then I realized, like, after maybe a few weeks of doing it, it came so much more naturally. Like, instead of having to force myself to think of things that friends thought about me, the positive talk started to foster. So, like, I still do it. Like, every night when I rub in my lotion, I, like, focus on a body part and I'm like, thanks, calves. Like, you know, you're great. You help me run, like, and jump, and, you know, I'm so, yeah, I appreciate you. Like, thank you, quads. And I go through, like, all my muscle groups. I'm like, you know, you could just do it like legs, arms, body, whatever. But I, like, try to be, like, practice gratitude for my body, and practice affirmations to remind myself that, like, you know, you're so much more than just your skin house. You know, you're you know, you have so much more to contribute to this world. Like, if we just get outside just how we look. So mantra, affirmations, and then a mantra, like, whenever I have a thought where I'm, like, going down that road to think of, you know, with the disordered, like, eating, or I start to be like, oh, I don't eat pasta, or I don't eat this, or, like, because I start to feel, like, unsafe, I'm like, oh, for one, that's a trigger. Like, where in my life do I feel unsafe, and why am I clinging to old behaviors? Two, we have already been down that road. We know where it leads. It's not going to make us feel any better. And so I have to pull back and go, yeah, it doesn't make me feel any better, to remind myself. So using that as a mantra. I practice gratitude every day, so I've got a little gratitude journal, and I write all of the things in life that I'm grateful for, because when we practice gratitude, it helps increase happiness. So those are kind of just, like, the cornerstones of what I started to do. Obviously seeing my counsellor, but also, like, I remember him saying to me, like, I'm not going to change you in the sense where you know, like, I change you as a person. I'm going to help you uncover who you are as a person, and help you feel more comfortable in that, so that you don't need to use these behaviors to keep yourself safe anymore. And so I saw this whole journey as figuring out who I was, and figuring out who I was underneath all of this stuff. So I was just bringing my better self to the table. And I think seeing it in that sense, I was just like, this is exciting. You know, I was like, yeah, I'm super excited to see who I actually am. Like, I'm so excited to see who I'm becoming, and what I can, how much I can be. So yeah, I went through a few evolutions, but I definitely feel like I'm at a point now where I'm pretty comfortable with myself.
And that's such a better outlook to have versus, like, going to a counsellor or something with the thought of, like, I'm broken, I'm going to be fixed, or something like that. And I liked the one you said about thinking of things, characteristics or traits that your friends mention. Like, I think so often we focus on, like, the physical appearance ones, but so often you forget that friends are just like, oh, I love your energy, or you're so funny, or, like, you're so this or those, so that. So I think it's, when you're trying to work on that body acceptance, is reminding yourself that, like, your friends are friends with you
for a reason,
those, not because you're a size 6 or a size 8. Like, they probably couldn't give a shit if tomorrow you went from being a size 8 to an 18 or whatever. Like, at the end of the day, they just vibe you for you and your energy and all those other things.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, you know, I had a few of my really close OG friends follow me through this whole entire thing, and, like, you know, when I was and kind of in the pit, a lot of them were saying to me, like, you just don't seem like you just don't seem like your bubbly self, you don't seem sparkly. Like, you know, I think a lot of the things that they loved me for were disappearing because I was so inward instead of focusing on, you know, becoming, and I was just only existing in being. And so as I started to get better and started to, like, feel more comfortable and figure out, you know, start to extract my essence back out into who I am, and that started to come back, and I just noticed that they would want to spend more time with me. And so I was like, oh, like, it was costing me so much more than just my own energy and time.
Yeah.
You mentioned, the power of your friends, and I think environment is such a huge factor in transformative change.
Yeah.
Did you find that there was friction when you started to leave that bodybuilding scene?
Oh, yeah.
'Cause of course, like, I'm sure you would have made friends there. You were in it. You were working with them.
Yeah.
And then through your transformation, I'm sure you would have been like, okay, I've got to leave this environment in order to fully embrace the change.
Yeah.
Talk to us about the friction, about leaving friends that, you may have.
I think, like, luckily, a lot of people kind of moved in that direction away from it. Like, after, like, there was a big shift away when we kind of were in our evolution. I think after that, more awareness started to be brought to the table around, is this actually healthy? I was already transitioning into working as a PT anyway, and so I was really busy in becoming, like, moving into coaching. And so I think because, like, I transitioned out of leaving bodybuilding and into being a PT, there was a natural kind of shift there anyway, and I was so busy that I didn't have the time to, like, do extra cardio on the treadmill next to somebody else who was prepping and stuff like that. I was coaching, and I was, like, trying to find time to fit in extra bits of training. So I didn't have a heap of friends in the industry. It was more just, like, more acquaintances, and I was going into a new evolution anyway, so I didn't really lose people in the sense where nobody really stepped away and I noticed it. It was more just like I was going into a new kind of line of work, and I'd see them around and say hi, but I was kind of still in that mentality anyway, and I'd be, like, shaking up my BCAAs. And so I think the transition was so slow that, like, I didn't really lose any friends as such. But I never really made friends in that industry really to begin with, because I was so uncomfortable and inwardly focused that I didn't have a whole heap of energy to make friends, and I probably wasn't a very nice person to be around. So a lot of my friends, like my OG friends, who, like, I'm still really good friends with now, were kind of, like, on the outside, weren't really that into fitness anyway, and they were kind of like, we miss you, like, and I was like, hey, I'm starting a new business, like, please bear with me, and, on top of all of that other stuff. But a lot of my friends who I have now, I made in my transformation out of being so fitness obsessed in my CrossFit community, because I'm at a functional gym now and I have been for a few years. A lot of my friends have come from there, and they're, like, couldn't care less about, like, your legging size or whatever, and they nobody drinks their fancy BCAA. So I think once I transitioned out of a commercial gym and out of a kind of commercial gym environment, I started to bring in my people. So yeah.
So that's where you PT now?
So I PT out of my own studio now.
Cool.
I've got my own studio at home.
What's your studio called?
It's called Strong.
Great. And it's your house too?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. How good is it to have these autonomy, right?
It's so good.
Just train downstairs or wherever at your own home.
Yeah.
And do videos whenever you want. Just have the full freedom.
Yeah.
You don't have to pay rent.
Oh my god, I know, the rent. Yes.
Carry on.
Well, I was going to say, for those that do follow you from your PTing and follow on the G, they all know that you've recently had your name changed to Flow Coach Katie.
Yes.
So do you want to tell us more about that venture and sort of what that shift has been with your coaching over there? Yes.
So after doing bodybuilding, I noticed, like, an absence of my period. Like, I'm sure many women experience that. And, there was a lot of talk around hormones, especially, like with the guys, they're talking about testosterone, but with the, like, women, they're talking about estrogen, and estrogen is so evil and we should block it, and progesterone and rah. And then there was girls taking tea, and I was just, like, very confused by the whole, like, notion of it. Like, I was like, okay, well, this is kind of interesting. I want to know more. And I found the whole subject really interesting. And then I lost my period, and I was like, cool, I don't have to worry about it. And then I was like, actually, I wonder what happens to my body when you don't have a period.
Dun, dun.
Yeah, and I was like, And so I went down this big rabbit hole, like, of upskilling and educating myself around, like, women's hormonal health, and it turned into this, like, 5-year-long absolute passion. And I noticed that, you know, I was getting a lot of clients who were coming in and they're like, I'm really anxious and depressed. And then I found a trend that, like, generally all my clients who came in who were anxious and depressed were also on the pill. And I was like, damn, maybe it does so much more than what we think. And so then I started to, like, really, like, research in-depth stuff, and I started reading, like, in journal articles about, like, women's performance around training on hormonal birth control and then off hormonal birth control. And then I was like, whoa, this is significantly different. And then I started to read about studies that were done on like pheromones and, like, women's selection of mate based on, like, being on hormonal birth control and off hormonal birth control. And I was like, whoa, this is really loopy. Anyway, I went down this massive big hole to find that women actually have, like, because we have a period, our bodies lean into training in different modalities into where we are in our cycle. So our body actually utilizes oxygen so much better in the first part of our cycle, just after our period. And so I started to adapt the way that I trained my clients completely. So I would train more cardiovascular load and more intensity at the start of the month. Then we'd hit ovulation, and that's naturally when women are at their strongest. And so then I made that our PB week, and I noticed that heaps of my clients were starting to hit personal bests, like, significantly better than before. And then in the kind of later part of our cycle, I noticed that my clients were coming in and they were requesting, like, I want to just focus on lifting today. I'm tired. I just want to do deadlifts, or I just want to do squats. And I'd be like, okay. I noticed a trend in my own training. And I was like, yeah, I don't feel like doing cardio in that part of my cycle either. And so the more I started to learn, the more I realized that our body really does have a natural kind of tendency for different types of exercise in different parts of the cycle, especially with a natural cycle as opposed to hormonal birth control. And so I, like, kind of was like, started to research out there, and I was like, oh, there is no programming whatsoever that's made for females by a female that's adapted to working with your body as opposed to against it. Because, like, you know, I would watch some of the trainers in the gym. They'd be like, you know, like, they'd have a client, she'd be like on the leg extension crying, and she'd be like, I'm on day 1 of my period, and he'd be like, come on 10 more reps, come on, suck it up, rah, rah. And I was like, that guy has no idea. And I was like, for one, like, she's super emotional and he's, like, pushing her through stress. 2, like, her body isn't at a point in time during her cycle where she can actually handle the load of that. Our bodies don't recover, like, in the second part of our cycle we get a drop off of estrogen, and estrogen actually helps our bodies recover, and that's what helps prevent soreness, especially in the first part, so I can go so much harder. So, like, without the estrogen to help that poor girl's body recover, like, she's going to be sore, like, on her period, so she probably doesn't feel mentally great anyway. You're at such greater risk of getting injured at that point, like, so you would know that. And I was just like, I can't believe there's nothing that exists like this. And I was just like, wow.
Insert me.
Yeah, and I was like, I got to do something about this. So I created Flow Coach. So I'd been training my clients like this for the last 2 years anyway, and we noticed significant changes. And then I started to get people coming to me to ask me, oh, like, you're the period PT. Like, you train people based on where they are in their cycle. And my friend said that, like, you know, her run times have increased heaps, or she can lift way more, and I want to do that too, or I want to fix my period, or I want to listen to my body. And I was like, oh, well, okay, so now I'm starting to get known for this. I need to do something about it. So now I've created, like, Flow Coach, which is monthly programming for women or people who bleed around honoring your body. So it's like it's all based on where you are in your cycle, and you follow the strength programming based on your own individual cycle. So then I have suggested endings for each workout based on speed, which is cardiovascular training, stretch, which is kind of yin yoga, and strong, which is strength accessory. So say if I've got a client and she's in the first part of her cycle, then I would say, okay, well, you're in this week for our strength cycle, you know, if we're doing squats or whatever, depending on what day we are in. And then I was like, if you're here, I recommend your ending be speed or strong based on what your goals are. And so then my client would be like, okay, they'd do their initial programming, and then they would jump into doing the ending that's based on where they are. So it's like, very specific programming for women and people who bleed around honouring their bodies and learning them so much more and leaning into the modalities of training in each cycle.
It sounds like you are feeling like a big gap in the market. Like you said, it's not a common thing out there that you hear of PTs for women making programs that are sort of adjusted for their cycle.
Normally it's just like suck it up, buttercup, like, come on, like, you know, I know that you've got cramps, but like, have you tried eating a banana?
And for me, it was a client that told me, you know, she was telling me that what part of the period she was in, and I was like, what does that mean? I was like, what's that got to do with anything? And then it was only until I had to research my own thing and then be like, oh shit, there's a whole thing that we're not taught at PT school.
We're not, and the thing is, like, you know, they don't even talk about it, which I feel like is pretty poor, like, you know, given that obviously, like, with men, like, it's really great because you get to reset every 24 hours, so like your drop in performance is only if you get shitty sleep, but for women, like, it just really fluctuates. And so I was like wondering, like, why does this happen? Like, why can I lift, like, you know, hit a push press of, you know, X amount, but then next week I can barely lift the bar, like, it feels so heavy, like, why is this happening? So it just was a crazy pursuit in figuring that all out, really.
You said you started asking yourself the question, what happens if I never get my period? What did you come up with?
Wow, so much. So we need, like, first off, like, I have ADHD, and so I noticed, like, my mental health started to decline heaps, and I was like, why does hormonal health have anything to do with, like, your period cycle? Like, what the hell? Like, and your mental health, how is it all joined together? And so I started to look, like, so estrogen and progesterone help make dopamine and serotonin, which are your neurotransmitters in your head, which are for, like, dopamine and serotonin help keep you happy, and it's your reward chemical and generally, like, all-round mood. And so if you're not ovulating and creating your own estrogen and progesterone, well, then your production of dopamine and serotonin is going to be greatly, like, hindered. So then you're going to feel sad and probably anxious and probably no drive to do anything. And I was like, okay, well, I feel all of those things, so shit. And then also, like, estrogen is really amazing for your heart health, so it keeps your arteries strong. And I was like, I don't want to have a heart attack. It's why, like, generally, like, you know, people who have, like, really severe hospitalized eating disorders, like, are at massive risk of, like, heart attack and stroke. Like, you need your own hormones for, like, protecting a lot more than just your, you know, your period or, you know, for reproduction. Also, like, bone health. So I had a client who was on the pill, and she broke one of her feet just tripping down the stairs, and then 3 weeks later she broke her other foot. And she was like to me, what the fuck? I've broken both my feet in the space of, like, 4 weeks. And I was like, why? And she was like, I'm on this pill, blah blah blah. And I was like, go get a bone density scan, like, you know, get your doctor to do that. And she had, like, the start of, like, osteopenia because the pill leaches calcium from your bones, and so it can help make your bones brittle, but your own hormones help with your own bone density, so they help make your bones nice and strong. And so I was like, okay, so if I don't have a period and I just let it go on and on and on, and I don't make any effort to get it back, like, I'm sacrificing my bone density. I don't want to just, like, break a bone by falling down a stair. I don't want to have a random heart attack. You know, I quite like being alive. I also like being happy, and that was, for me, majorly taking a big toll. Like, my anxiety was through the roof, and I didn't know I had, obviously, an untreated, like, ADHD as well, but like my mental health was already a bit rocky, and I noticed it was significantly worse. So yeah, your own hormones, and you know, which you create by ovulating, which you obviously, and then you get a period. So it's really, really important. I just didn't know the importance of that. So it's like, it really dictates the entire kind of health for your whole body.
What about the pill? What are the long-term effects of being on the pill?
Well, like it's like, I think the pill is revolutionary in helping women to, especially in lots of sticky situations, you know, like sometimes, especially like women or somebody who bleeds, they might not have the option to be safe in other ways. So it is revolutionary, and it has given a lot of power to women. So like, I don't hate it. I just hate when it's the only option given, and I hate when it's preached for fixing everything when it's really not. It's just masking, it's a band-aid. So the long-term effects is obviously it can cause brittle bones. The depot, which is the injection, is actually a black box drug in so many different countries, except it's still legal here, but it's got such significant bone density, like leaching, that it's illegal in a lot of countries, but they're still doing it here. And I'm like, wow, like that is not okay, because it's got such a degradation. So yeah, bone density issues, heart issues, especially mood issues. And then the thing that I found the most interesting from researching everything is the t-shirt test. So what they did is they had a test of women, and they had a group who were on hormonal birth control, and they had a group who had a natural cycle and were doing like different ways to obviously not get pregnant or whatever. And this is super gross, but they got men to wear t-shirts for like a few days, and just a massive subcut of men. And then they put all the t-shirts in plastic bags, and they got both groups of women to smell the t-shirts and say if they preferred any of the sweat smells of any of the t-shirts. And they found that the women in the group where they weren't on hormonal birth control had a very strong reaction and a very strong preference to some t-shirts. And then the women who were on hormonal birth control, they had no preference, and were like, well, I have no preference, they all smell like sweaty t-shirts. Like the results around that were like there was absolutely no preference, and as opposed to the women in the group where they weren't, and they actually were like, well, that one actually smells not so bad, you know, like, or like, actually I don't mind the smell of that. And so like, because as humans obviously we're still like animals to some degree, they found in alarming rates that like genetically the women who were drawn to certain t-shirts were a really amazing genetic match for procreation with that person, because like animals, we're drawn to good genetic matches. We're drawn to good mates for us. And the fact that the women on the hormonal birth control like had no preference because they're basically in menopause, like I found that alarming. Like, oh, so we're selecting sometimes, you know, we're told, you know, you need to go on this for your skin or whatever, like young. Like, how do you know you're choosing a good bioidentical mate for procreation? If like, you know, if you want to have children, you know, and now they're experiencing, you know, all of these genetic issues and like fertility issues, and like I don't think it's a coincidence, because like how are you supposed to, if you can't like smell pheromones and you can't, you know, it all seems to make too much kind of crossover there. But like I found that quite alarming. Like, you know, yeah, at the end of the day we are animals. So I was like, wow.
So what if there's a female listening right now that doesn't want to do anything that is going to obstruct their hormones?
Yeah.
But also want to make sure that, you know, they want to stay sexually active, they don't want to get pregnant. What, and I'm asking you this too.
Yeah.
What
we'll probably say the same thing.
Yeah, probably.
What things can they do to, you know, to tick off those boxes?
So like what I personally do is I have a device called a Daisy. So I've been using it for, I started using Daisy when no one was using Daisy. Like I was like typing in non-hormonal methods for contraception, because I don't want to have my own children in life, but I can't wait to be an auntie. But I definitely don't want to end up like, you know, with a surprise. So I was looking at getting a copper IUD, but I'd already had the hormonal IUD, and like the insertion process like wasn't a walk in the park. And so like you can do that, but I've been using Daisy now for like I think around 7 years, and it is a device, basically an artificial intelligence, and it learns your cycle in your body based on really, really tiny like fluctuations in temperature. And they've been making like FAM, so fertility awareness method devices for years, but they're never talked about. So a Daisy, it's like about the half the size of my hand. I put it in my mouth every single morning, and it tells me my fertility status. So it tells me I either get a red light, an orange light, or a red light. Or a green light, an orange light, and a red light. So if I get a green light, I'm infertile, you're good to go. You can actually only get pregnant like maybe a week out of the month. So green is good to go, you can go for it. But red and orange, like obviously it's up to like the individual, like whether they use like a barrier method or like, you know, the pull-out method's a bit risky, but like up to them, or like obviously non-penetrative like sexual intercourse. So like obviously it's just about awareness, bringing awareness and learning like, well, what actually would work for the person if they don't want to like, you know, invest in like every morning putting the Daisy in their mouth and like finding out the fertility status. And you know, it's not that hard, but you know, a copper IUD might be the way to go because that doesn't hormonally do anything. And I mean, it's good because it's just always there for 5 years, so you don't have to worry about it.
Oh, well, this is interesting because
yes.
You've been on Daisy for 7 years.
Yeah.
And Shanae, you've been on it for...
like 6 months maybe.
6 months.
No surprises?
No.
Yeah.
Would you say no surprises?
No surprises.
No, not yet.
Yeah.
But it's like you said, I think in those first, well, it does say like in the first sort of 3-4 months, it's still learning your cycle. So you're obviously
going to get more dicey.
Going to get more red days and not, and especially I think the only semi-scare was just because I had my period was late, but it wasn't late. It was just that it's still learning my cycle, and so in my head I was like, oh, surely like day 30, but it ended up being like day 43 that it came.
Oh, so. But it still was giving you greens.
Yeah.
So it's like it knows like straight away. So one of my clients has been using it and wanted to get pregnant, and I was like, just go for it, like just you know, let's run this experiment. And literally, so she was at like, you know, she'd be anywhere between 30 to 35, day 32, bam, rainbow lights.
Oh wow!
Because the temperature shift,
it
was so minimal, but it's like up, and it's like you get all the flashing lights, and so like you would know, Daisy would tell you before you even took a test. Like way before. So if it's still green and your period's late, sometimes you just like might have a stressful cycle, but you'll be able to tell, so you don't need to freak out. I've had some cycles that are like 42 days long.
And that's why I just think it's interesting that you, by doing it, you are learning your cycle more, again, as often as you're using it. It's like anything else. People always say, oh, like, you know, the pill's like 99% accurate, and it's like, well, it is as long as you're taking it every day at the same time. And Daisy's the same. As long as you're using it as it tells you to use, which is taking your temperature every day and then putting the data, it's going to be accurate. But because people can be like, what do you mean that sounds risky? But it's only risky if you're not using it properly. So, which is the same as everything else. Yeah,
it's the same thing. You know, I know plenty of people who got pregnant off the pill from like, oh, and then oops, I forgot to take it for 2 days. I'm like, same, you know. So it's just about finding something that works for you. But I'm like massive, like the Daisy's so easy, and like Kurt even now, he, like, you know, I have it on my bedside in a little cup, like a teacup, and then sometimes like Kurt will be like, hey, and I'm like, hey, and he'll be like, green day, and I'm like, oh, like because he knows how to like push it to check the status, so he's just like, hey, and so it's like, I don't know, it kind of adds like a bit of fun into your relationship too.
Thanks, Kurt, appreciate that. So Katie, you have taken us on this amazing journey of where you've been and where you are now and how that's helped you transform. Do you have any regrets?
Any regrets? No, I don't think so. I guess maybe one, that I didn't start like working on myself and getting a little bit of help sooner, like letting myself like exist in the grey zone for so many years when I could have been taking back my power a long time ago. But I don't think that we should really ever have regrets in life. You know, I'm grateful for my struggle because it's helped me understand my clients and their struggle a lot more, and it's made me kind of who I am today. So, no, not really.
So if you could give Katie advice from 5 years ago, here's our closing question.
Oof.
What would it be? What would you tell her?
Stop living a half life. There's so much more out there, and right now you're only living one part. Like let's drop this and let's go.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Where can people find you?
So on Facebook, I'm Katie Fisher Fitness. On Instagram, I'm at Flow Coach Katie, and I guess I've got my website now. I've got a website. Yes. You can find me at my website, which is flowcoach.co.nz.
Cool. Katie Fisher, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.